But again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm personally super obviously excited for this conversation. As I've said to you, I think it's such an important topic that is starting to get a little bit more awareness. So I'm excited to share more about that with you today.
Great.
Just so everyone knows who I am, I'm Lauren. I'm a registered dietitian, holistic nutritionist, and the head of Nutrition at Sound. And for those of you who don't know Dr. Staci, she is a holistic oral health educator, the founder of NoPo Kids Dentistry, and the founder of Happi Floss. Dr. Staci Whitman is on a mission to create a cavity-free world. So she's going to be talking today about sugar and the oral microbiome. Thank you so much again, Dr. Staci.
Yes, thank you, Lauren. I'm excited. I'm happy to hear you also observe that the oral microbiome is becoming more front and center. For those of us that have been interested in this field of research for years, we're feeling pretty excited too. You know, the gut has gotten so much attention, rightfully so, but they are so interconnected. So I'm really excited to be speaking on this topic.
Yeah, I think that, you know, oftentimes we disconnect the mouth with the rest of the digestive system, and it's clearly very important. So starting out, what is the oral microbiome? Can you give us a definition of that?
Yes, certainly. So our bodies have multiple different microbiomes. You know, many of us are familiar with the gut microbiome, as I mentioned before, but we also have a different microbiome in our sinuses, in our vaginas, in our throats, in our mouths. And so it's basically the type of bacteria, fungi, yeast, et cetera, that live and inhabit in that space. And, you know, part of the Human Microbiome Project was defining what these microbes are and what these niches are. And we're learning there's, you know, at least 700 species of bacteria in our mouths. Wow. Very likely many, many more. But as we now know, we're more bacterial cells than human cells. And we've been conditioned for so long thinking that, you know, bacteria are dangerous and, like, you know, the whole germ theory has been disproven. We really need to start supporting our microbiomes rather than like annihilating them as we have been in the past. And the oral microbiome is very susceptible to this with a lot of the products that we're using, how we're breathing, and the foods that we're eating. And so we really want to nourish and support our oral microbiomes for not only oral health, but also for gut health and systemic health as well.
That's such an awesome description. And I'm like already thinking of some of the other questions I have when you talk about products that we put in our mouth and all of that. But I want us to jump into the sugar piece. So we know that sugar increases the risk for cavities, you know, having candy, sucking candies and all that sort of thing. We know that increases the risk for cavities. How does it impact the oral microbiome?
Yes, great question. So, you know, many of us have been taught since childhood to avoid candy and soda and maybe juice, but it's really so much more complicated than that. So yes, sugar is detrimental to our oral health, but also our systemic health. But the question is why? And that's where the oral microbiome comes in. So we generally, if we're healthy, we have a lot of benign or even beneficial bacteria in our mouths. There will always be outliers. There will always be some pathogenic guys floating around, but we just don't want them to become the dominant species, if you will. We don't want them to crowd out our healthy bacteria. And that's what's happening when we start seeing oral and dental disease, is that these pathogenic bacteria are proliferating and like crowding out all the good guys, is what we say. But why is that happening? Well, one of the main causes is that these pathogenic bacteria, they thrive on sugar. That is what they want to eat. Basically, simple refined carbohydrates. So it's not only sugar that you think of in candy bars and soda, but also flours, you know, refined sugars of that nature, things you don't normally think about, like hidden sugars in ketchup and salad dressings and crackers and pretzels, which are flours, but they translate into sugar essentially in the mouth. So these pathogenic bacteria, they love it. They have a feeding frenzy. every time we eat these things. And if we're not in balance with what we're consuming, they really can outnumber the beneficial bacteria in our mouth. And that leads to something called dysbiosis. So it's not only that we're eating sugar, but it's how frequently are we consuming it? So people who have like a big gulp soda, or even have crackers and they're kind of grazing, sipping, snacking all day, that's just constantly bathing your mouth in these food sources that are feeding these bacteria and just creating this vicious cycle and really allowing these bacteria to just get out of control. And that's why we focus so much on eating a whole food diet. And this is where sound is such a beautiful product, because if you are consuming a lot of beverages that are high in sugar, you can turn to a beverage like this that not only will not feed the bacteria, but it also has so many other health benefits to it as well. But, so be mindful of what we're consuming, but how frequently too. And so trying to consume things in one sitting, instead of sipping and grazing, eating on a schedule. If we are having something that's higher in carbohydrate dose, trying to eat it in a small amount of time rather than dragging it out over an hour, which many people are doing, especially with their beverages. So it's really a lot more than just staying away from candy bars and soda. It's about eating frequency, timing, what we're eating, how we're eating it, our hydration levels, how we're breathing too is very critical, because if we are changing the oral microbiome through how we're breathing, when we breathe through our mouths, the pH drops also and becomes acidic, then that also is leading to this perfect environment. So these bad bacteria, they love acid and they love sugar. And so they want to eat the sugar and they want to live in acid. So we really want to create a more neutral or alkaline environment and really be mindful of not overfeeding them, if you will. We want to be feeding them more healthy proteins and fats. And that's is where Eat the Rainbow comes in. So eating a wide range of healthy vegetables, some fruit. But it's pretty interesting stuff that we do find patients that are in homeostasis, they really don't get dental disease. And as a result, they generally don't have a lot of GI or gut disturbances or systemic issues as well.
That's so interesting. I'm like over here taking notes. I didn't even realize about the breathing component. Is there, in terms of creating a more acidic environment, are there certain foods that promote that as well? Is sugar one of them, or is that separate?
Yes. I just think ultra-processed foods.
Okay.
Like it's truly, this is how it's all interconnected, right? So what we're taught is good for our gut health, our systemic health, it's also the same for our mouth. So it's the ultra-processed package, highly refined foods that really can cause trouble. And unfortunately, we are a society that's eating more and more of those. So it's sort of, I don't like to lead with fear mongering or being sensational. And I like to give very attainable steps for especially busy parents, because, I work a lot with parents and children, but it is important to at least educate on these concepts and then try to take small steps forward, making changes at home just to promote systemic health.
Yeah. So on that topic, I know you mentioned sugary beverages. Are there like maybe 2 or 3 of the most sugary things you see people consuming? And then what are some of the swaps that you might mention or recommend?
So I think, unfortunately, a lot of children are still getting a lot of juice. I do think the dental community and the medical community has done a pretty decent job trying to educate on this, but and we can get into blood sugar issues as well. That's a whole other topic of why juice is not ideal. But from a dental standpoint, juice is basically straight sugar. There's no fiber. So the bacteria in our mouths just, could not be a better substance for them to be consuming. And unfortunately, most children, they're sipping on juice. It's in sippy cups. They're carrying it around the car. They're carrying it around their room or on a play date or at the playground and just sipping. And so it's just constantly bathing the teeth in essentially what becomes acid, and really leading to dysbiosis. So I think juice is the biggest one. And what I suggest, ultimately, I prefer plain water. That isn't always, you can't always make that leap. And that again is where sound comes in, or sparkling waters, or things that you can just kind of use to supplement the juice cravings, if you will, something a little more fun, something fizzy, something with health and nutritional benefits as well. So that would be the first one. The other one that I see a lot, and this is hard, but it's like crackers, pretzels, granola bars, and chips. Those tend to be our go-to snacks, especially with children. And I get it as a busy parent, you can grab it, it's in a bag, you throw it in your bag, you're out the door. But those foods are meant to be overconsumed, and they're very sticky. And we tend to eat them very slowly, again, spread out over time. And think if you eat chips, like just think how that feels in your mouth. Like they're kind of all throughout your teeth. Well, most children, like you or I, we might kind of pick it out with our tongue. We might take a swig of water and swish it around because that feeling is annoying to us. But children, they will let that sit there all day long. And so that's just sitting there, and the bacteria are just feeding on these carbohydrates, these crackers, these chips that are stuck in our teeth and releasing acid. And so, of course, everything in moderation. But if that is a go-to food of yours day in and day out, multiple times a day, and maybe your hygiene is not perfecto, you're really setting your child up to be imbalanced. And then I think the other place that sugar really sneaks in certainly is breakfast. I think breakfast is like a total sugar bomb for particularly American US society. We really have a high sugar based start of our day, and I think that just sets our kids up for failure. Again, much to do for blood sugar regulation, which is another topic. But also, you have the pancakes and the syrup, and then you have the juice, and then the cereals, and then sometimes the flavored milks. I mean, it's all sugar. So I love parents to try to just do a mindset shift, knowing that this will take time, but look toward more savory breakfast. I personally eat soup a lot for breakfast. I'll eat leftover stir fry for breakfast. I mean, it feels good in my body. I feel satiated. I have my protein source, my healthy fats. I feel really full for a long period of time. You send your kids off to school with this burst of sugar. I mean, not only is it unideal for their oral health and their oral environment, but they're going to crash. A couple hours later, they're going to have this blood sugar crash. And that's where you see behavioral issues, the inability to focus. And then it just perpetuates sugar cravings too. So I think just trying to re-strategize breakfast, like my family, we do a lot of hard-boiled eggs. They're already pre-cooked. I plan on, I'm kind of meal prep, and I'm not a big meal prepper. I mean, I really am not, but I do cook hard-boiled eggs on Sundays to get us through the week. We do a lot of like nut butters. We eat a lot of eggs, but you could do beans, again, leftovers from the night before, broths and soups and things. And a lot of other cultures do have more savory breakfast, but then also being mindful of dips and sauces and dressings. I mean, that really is where things add up. And so, I love nutritional labels, but I don't care as much about macros and that type of stuff when I'm trying to educate a family. I want them to look at the ingredients, and I want them to see where is there sugar in the ingredient list. I mean, hopefully it's not there at all. I want to teach them all the hidden names for sugar, because now the food industry, I can't even remember at last count. It's like over 200 different names for sugar. And they're buried so deep. And, can you pronounce these ingredient lists? Could you go to the store and purchase this ingredient and bring it into your kitchen and make it? And that's sort of how I start teaching my children. is really focusing on the ingredient list. And so if you see in the first few ingredients, if there is sugar in that, I would love us to try to find an alternative food item that doesn't have that in the list.
Those are great points. So the sugary beverages, I love that that idea. The breakfast too. I mean, like the snack bars and all of that. The breakfast, I love your options of leftovers. My 3-year-old loves that too.
And it's easy for you as a parent.
So much
I have some leftover stir fry from last night, you know, just heat it up, throw it on the table. And it's so much about, your kids don't know what is quote unquote normal. I mean, what does that even mean, normal? But you're creating the environment in your home, you know, so don't be afraid of that, you know.
Totally. And just keep pushing it. Yeah. The pancakes too. I like a banana egg pancake that at least has a little more protein, or like giving a pancake and dipping it in yogurt or cottage cheese. At least there's some protein there.
There are tweaks. You can add hemp seeds, flax seeds, nut butters.
Love that.
You can make like a fruit compote instead of a syrup, you know. And again, you may not go from, you know, sugary pancakes with syrup, like the Bisquick type, to these high protein nut butter pancakes overnight. You just kind of tweak it over time and give yourself some grace, and even take the littlest changes as wins. But, you know, really trying to adapt and influence our children's palates from an early age, it really will just set them up for so much success.
That all feels really doable. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know we only have 10 more minutes. I want to open it up and see if anyone has questions. I definitely have some questions that I'm excited to chat with you about. If anybody has any questions, on the bottom right-hand side, there's a Q&A box, if you don't mind throwing them in there. And if you can't find that, then there's the chat box as well that I can look at as well. So I wanted to ask, you mentioned that things that you put in your mouth or oral hygiene sort of things matter. So I know that mouthwash, there still are mouthwashes that are like kill 99% of germs, or so. I'm assuming that's what they say. They're like alcohol and losing on. That's not beneficial, I'm assuming, for the oral microbiome, right?
Terrible.
Okay.
Terrible. It's leading to more dysbiosis.
Okay.
So I'm really of the philosophy less is more. I do think there is some pretty terrible marketing out there in the dental world. We've been, for lack of a better term, kind of brainwashed as to what quality products are. I'm seeing a shift in this, which is very exciting. It will be a little bit of a slow movement, but in particular, I am not a fan of mouthwash. Generally, mouthwash is, as you mentioned, marketed to kill bacteria. But basically it's carpet bombing your mouth. You know, it's not selective. So these astringents, these alcohols, these heavy essential oils, they're going in and they're annihilating all of the bacteria in your mouth, including the healthy microbes and even the neutral microbes. It's really like, you know, think of your oral microbiome like a rainforest. There's all these different levels and layers of different life forms, okay? And some are very helpful and some don't really do much and some can be harmful. But if you went in and just lit the whole rainforest on fire, you'd be in trouble. And unfortunately, we're sort of seeing that on our planet, but I digress. So I'm not a big fan of mouthwash. If you want to rinse, the best thing to do is honestly a baking soda rinse. I mean, that is easy, it's inexpensive, and it will neutralize or alkalize the mouth immediately. And that an alkaline environment or a neutral environment is where our healthy microbiome wants to live. They don't like acid. So again, acid leads to disease. So I like baking soda rinses, and I am a fan of oil pulling as well with like a raw, unrefined organic coconut oil. You don't need to do it every day because, you know, coconut oil is antibacterial as well, but I do think there are a lot of benefits to that. I don't think you need to do it for 20 minutes. I just do it for a few minutes a day, and kids will do this too. But that will help dislodge bacteria. It can help whiten and freshen, and it has a lot of Ayurvedic principles to it too. You know, it's been used for a long time in Ayurvedic medicine, but I am a fan of coconut oil pulling, but I would say skip the mouthwash. I mean, I would rather you focus on flossing. Flossing is my big thing that I yell from the rooftops. Not most of us are not flossing enough. And there's more and more research now to show us that gum disease and periodontal disease, which is a microbial imbalance, and inflammation, it leads to systemic issues. And those can range from cardiovascular disease, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, Alzheimer's, and dementia, which when I say that one, that really gets people's attention. I think we're all very mindful of our brain health, and that's something we all want to avoid, is, you know, losing our cognitive abilities. You know, it lowers our immune health. So I am a big fan of flossing, but just be careful, even with toothpaste, flossers, or floss. Unfortunately, there's so many chemicals, you know, there are emulsifiers and surfactants, plasticizers, dyes, artificial flavors, you know, these foaming agents like SLS, everything you put in your mouth is changing the terrain, the microbiome of your mouth. And so many of these are disruptive. And so trying to find brands that are more holistic, if you will, or just cleaner, less toxic. I still don't think there's perfect toothpaste on the market yet, but they're getting better and better.
Okay. So someone just asked, actually, do you have any favorite toothpaste brands that don't have all that stuff in it, or have less of it?
I think some of the best ones on the market right now, because I'm a big fan of hydroxyapatite. That is,
yes, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen this in Boca and a few other.
Yes. Boca and Risewell both have hydroxyapatite. And hydroxyapatite is found in our dental enamel and our bones organically, naturally. There's 97% content in our enamel and up to 60% content in our bones. And hydroxyapatite has actually been studied and used for decades and decades in other countries, and even by NASA. But it's getting to be more and more prominent and known in the United States, and you're seeing more and more products with it. So I do love Boca and Risewell. I will say buyer beware, because people are catching wind and companies are catching wind that this is kind of the latest and greatest. A lot of products are coming out marketing themselves as a hydroxyapatite toothpaste, but they do not have the high enough concentration of hydroxyapatite to be efficacious based on the research. So it's sort of like they just put a sprinkling of hydroxyapatite in there, and then they can market it as hydroxyapatite toothpaste, but it's not enough to actually create this remineralization effect. But I do like Boca and Risewell. Redmond has a toothpaste I like a lot too. It doesn't have glycerin in it, which I'm a fan of. I don't love glycerin. As of right now, there isn't a great toothpaste with hydroxyapatite without glycerin. So if you're concerned with glycerin, which the basic concern with glycerin is it coats the teeth and it can affect or prevent the absorption of these minerals. So it doesn't seem to be affecting it 100%, but maybe it just slows and delays the absorption, if you will. There's also, if you're looking for a tooth powder, I really like Primal Organics, and they have a kids flavor too. It's just some people really can't do the tooth powders. You know, they need like a paste, and I understand that. That's just kind of a texture preference. But those are some of my favorites right now.
I love that. Thank you. Couple more questions. I know we are almost out of time, so I want to get to those. Is vinegar an acid?
Yes.
You count that. Okay. Because I know vinegar has some like health benefits.
Yeah. So about apple cider vinegar. Yeah. So if you're gonna do that, I just don't want you sucking on it. You know, like shoot it, like whoop, real quick down the hatch, and then rinse with some water. Or if you feel you're really susceptible or concerned, you can do a quick rinse with a little baking soda water. Like just sprinkle some baking soda and some water, swish it around your mouth and spit it out.
Okay.
But I don't love the idea of like sipping on some of these apple cider vinegar drinks for a long period of time. Like I really love some of these fire ciders and things that are out. I myself consume them, but it's kind of like, it's my shot, if you will.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's an awesome answer. I love that. Thank you. What about sweeteners effects on the oral microbiome? Stevia, other types of non-sugar sweeteners?
Sure. Excellent question. Jury is still out. So, xylitol has been pretty well studied to inhibit bacterial proliferation, but a lot of these sugar alternatives like monk fruit and stevia and even xylitol, we don't fully understand what it is doing to our gut microbiome and our oral microbiome. I have my concerns, but it's just so new to the science, and it's not like it's getting a lot of funding attention right now. We just don't know. So I think it's a tough one. I consume them. I try to avoid a lot of just sweetener in general. That's just my preference. Now, this is my career and my passion, so I may be a little more strict than I need to be. But if I am going to sweeten with something, I will use like a stevia or a monk fruit. And just kind of hope for the best until more research comes out on what's doing.
But more towards the natural sweeteners, it sounds like the stevia monk fruit.
Correct. Yeah. I really like trying to use fruit as a sweetener. And so, you can reduce fruit like as a compote, like I mentioned, and use that as a sweetener too. But,
Awesome.
or a little honey. I mean, you have to find balance, right? Like we can't be so black and white and sensational. And our bodies are miraculous. Like they do find balance and homeostasis, but it's just, it can get out of control very quickly. And especially sugar, so because it really is changing our neural feedback and our palates. And a lot of these foods that we consume, because it's affecting our blood sugar, it makes us want more sugar when we crash. And also a lot of these processed foods have a lot of chemicals in them that hit the bliss point, which is this point of wanting more. The food scientists are really on it here and really manipulating our brains. But you do have to live life, right? So it's just trying to find balance, and of course moderation is key, but trying to limit things as much as possible, and just making sure you're seeing a dentist regularly too. Of course, I'm partial. I would love people to work with a more functionally minded or holistic dentist, just because we do tend to look at the whole body. As you mentioned earlier, the mouth is not separate from the body. And I think that stigma happened because dentistry and medicine are separate. And so it's created this illusion that these are two separate things that we're dealing with in the body, but we're really trying to get the mouth back into the body and work more with our functional medicine colleagues, because we need health in our mouths to have optimal health.
Yeah, especially like you're saying, if it impacts all these other risks for chronic disease in other areas of your body. Well, this was super valuable. I mean, I'm taking away being most mindful of sugary beverages, the snacky foods, the longevity of time that you are actually snacking on them, sipping on those beverages, and breakfast, making it more protein rich gradually. And this information was so interesting. I can't wait to listen to it again. The good thing is that this is recorded. So, well, many good things. But one of the good things is this is recorded. So I know a bunch of people signed up but couldn't make it at the time. So you will get an email shortly with the link to watch it later. And thank you so much, Dr. Staci. This was so awesome. Thanks, you.
Lauren. Yeah, I mean, I could talk forever about it. I do tend to hop on if you're interested in oral microbiome health, I speak a lot more in depth on it on my platform too. So because I can go on tangents. Obviously, this is my passion, so.
You gave amazing information. Do you want to? I mean, I'll include it in the description of the webinar, but what do you want to shout out your social so people can check it out now?
Sure. Yeah, it's Dr._Staci, and doctor spelled out, DOCTOR_STACI. And I'm going to be on TikTok soon. I'm a little nervous because I'm worried about the editing component, but it will be educational. I'm not going to be dancing. I'll be teaching. So I'm going to be on that platform soon too.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Dr. Staci. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye, Lauren. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.